Ever wonder how those tiny little changes we make, like in our routines, can actually lead to massive changes in our lives?
Yeah, it's funny, right? We get so caught up in wanting these huge overnight transformations.
Oh,
But real change, lasting change, it's not about that. It's about those small, almost unnoticeable tweaks we make day after day.
and that's exactly what we're diving into today. Atomic habits. Think of it like a roadmap to unlocking your full potential. But instead of some big, grand gesture, it's all about these tiny 1% improvements that snowball into something extraordinary over time.
It's like that saying, right? Little hinges swing big doors.
Yeah.
We often dismiss the power of the seemingly insignificant. Like, who really thinks those tiny actions we take each day are actually shaping our destiny?
Right. Like, come on, how much of a difference can just one tiny choice really make?
Well, let me ask you this. Imagine a plane taking off, right?
Okay. Headed to, like, New York City. Yeah.
Exactly. Destination, New York City. Now imagine a really tiny course correction. Just 3.5 degrees. Practically nothing, right? Passengers wouldn't even notice.
Yeah, I doubt anyone would even realize.
But hold on. Here's the thing.
Okay.
That tiny shift, maintained over the entire flight, you know where they end up?
No, tell me.
Washington, D.C. instead.
Whoa, no way.
Yeah. It's the power of compounding those tiny, seemingly insignificant adjustments, but are applied consistently over time. They add up. It's not the big, flashy moves. It's about the steady direction we're heading in, day after day.
That's actually a really powerful visual. It's like the tortoise and the hare. It's about focusing on the long game, trusting that those small, consistent actions will get us where we want to be.
100%. And I think a lot of people, they really struggle with that.
Yeah.
They get discouraged early on because they're so focused on seeing those instant results.
Oh, tell me about it. It's so easy to get caught up in that. We want it all, and we want it now.
Exactly. Our world is all about instant gratification. We check the scale after a week of eating healthy, expecting some massive change.
Ugh, yes. Been there.
But that's not really how it works, is it?
No.
Atomic habits, it teaches us to shift that focus away from the immediate outcomes and towards the trajectory.
Like, are we actually moving in the right direction?
That's the key.
Right.
Let's say you're saving money consistently.
Yeah.
Your current balance, it might not seem like much.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're consistently putting money aside, that's the important part.
Yeah.
You're moving towards financial freedom, even if it's a slow and steady journey.
It's like, okay, are we moving towards our goals or further away from them?
Exactly.
It's about trusting the process, right? Like building those positive habits that will ultimately get us where we want to be. Now, in Atomic Habits, the author, James Clear, he breaks down this whole habit formation process into 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward. And what's really fascinating is how it highlights how our brains are wired for these automatic responses.
It is fascinating. And this plays out even in the simplest actions. Think about walking into a dark room. The darkness, that's your cue. It triggers a craving, you need light.
Right, so you instinctively reach for the light switch. That's the response. And boom, light. Problem solved. That's the reward.
Exactly. And you probably don't even think about it anymore. It's just automatic.
Our brains love a good shortcut.
Tell me about it. And these shortcuts, they're everywhere, not just with light switches. Think about Thorndike's cat experiment.
Okay, remind me.
So, they put these cats in a box, right?
Mhm.
And the only way to escape was to press a lever. With enough repetition, the cats, they figured it out. They became super efficient, straight for the lever, no hesitation. And that's what happens with habits. Our brain learns that certain actions lead to satisfying results, so they get filed under automatic to conserve energy.
Habits, they're like our brain's way of saying, hey, I got this. I've been here before. We're good. Just put it on autopilot. So we're starting to understand how habits work, but how do we actually hack this system, especially when it comes to building new positive ones?
Okay, so you want to talk about hacking habits. One incredibly powerful technique is all about strategic cue placement.
I like where this is going. Tell me more about this.
Okay, so picture this. You're trying to learn guitar,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
but you struggle with practicing regularly.
It's so easy to get off track.
Instead of keeping that guitar tucked away in its case, what if you leave it out in plain sight?
Right in the middle of the living room.
Exactly. Make it impossible to ignore. Now the cue is front and center.
Out of sight, out of mind, right. Make it visible, you're more likely to use it.
Right, but, and maybe this is just me,
Huh.
sometimes even seeing the guitar isn't enough.
Oh, I hear you. We've all been there. We say things like, I'm going to eat healthier, or this is the year I finally learned that language, and then life happens.
It's so easy to get stuck in that cycle of good intentions, but no follow-through.
It is. We set these big, vague goals, but then we get bogged down in the details, or life throws a curveball our way, and we lose momentum.
And that's a really important point. It's not just about the cues. We have to get specific about our intentions. We need to move beyond these vague aspirations and create a concrete plan of action.
Okay, so vague goals, yeah, we've all been there. But how do we actually bridge that gap, between like good intentions and actually making it happen?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's where implementation intentions come into play.
Implementation intentions.
Yeah, it sounds kind of fancy, but it's actually really simple. It's basically just telling yourself, okay, I'm going to do this specific thing at this specific time. Instead of just saying, oh, I'll practice guitar more, you say, I'm going to practice guitar for 30 minutes after my morning coffee on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
Okay, so it's like putting it on your calendar, making it a real appointment.
Exactly. You're scheduling it in.
Yeah.
No more guesswork, no more excuses.
I love that. It's like you wouldn't blow off a meeting with your boss, so why blow off your own goals?
Right. And speaking of cues and environments, you ever notice how grocery stores, they always put those tempting snacks like right near the checkout lines?
Totally. Like, come on, they know what they're doing.
They know exactly what they're doing. They're playing on those impulse buys. Our environments, they're full of these little subtle cues that influence our behavior even when we don't realize it.
It's kind of sneaky when you think about it.
It is. There was this fascinating study done by Dr. Ann Thorndike, right? And they decided to just rearrange the drinks in a hospital cafeteria, just the drinks. They put water bottles near the cash registers instead of soda, and then scattered more water throughout the cafeteria. It just made it more visible.
Okay, so they basically just made it easier to grab a water.
Exactly. You know what happened? Soda sales plummeted by 11%.
Get out.
Yeah, and water sales, they shot up 25% just by making that one tiny change.
Wow, proof that our environment really does influence our choices. Okay, so we talked about cues, setting clear intentions. What about that reward system? How do we tap into that to stay motivated, especially when those results, they don't happen overnight?
You're talking about the dopamine hook. It's a powerful motivator for sure.
Yeah.
That feeling of anticipation, the pleasure we get from rewards. Our brains crave that stuff. Why do you think people get hooked on social media or video games?
Oh, because those little notifications, those likes, it's like instant gratification, a quick dopamine hit.
Exactly. And our brains, they're hardwired to seek that out. Remember we were talking about those rats
Oh, the
earlier?
ones in the box.
Well, there was another experiment with rats, right, where they blocked dopamine release in their brains.
Oh, right. And the rats, they just lost all motivation. Didn't they starve themselves or something?
Pretty much, they completely lost the desire to eat, drink, even mate. Like they'd lost their will to live, which, kind of dark, but also really highlights how crucial dopamine is for motivation and desire.
No, that's fascinating. Okay, so how do we, harness that dopamine superpower for good? How do we make those good habits as appealing as those quick dopamine hits we get from, scrolling through social media?
Well, one strategy is called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. That sounds intriguing. Tell me more about this.
So it's basically pairing something you have to do, something maybe you don't love doing, with something you want to do,
Yeah.
something you genuinely enjoy.
Okay, I'm listening. Give me an example.
Let's say you hate folding laundry, right? But you love listening to true crime podcasts.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
So you only allow yourself to listen to that podcast while you're folding laundry. You're linking something you have to do with something you enjoy.
You're basically tricking your brain into craving laundry time.
Exactly.
Okay, I am here for this. I'm calling it Habit Hacking 101. So we've got our cues, we're getting specific with our intentions, we're making those desired actions, enjoyable and rewarding. But what about when our willpower just fizzles out? We're only human, right? We often choose the path of least resistance, even when we know better.
It's true. We do. Our brains, they're wired to conserve energy. It's like this built-in survival mechanism from our caveman days.
Yeah.
So naturally, we gravitate towards what's easy and familiar, even if it's not the best choice in the long run.
So true. I mean, I know I should probably be meditating every morning instead of scrolling through social media, but
So the notification ding.
yes, it sucks me right in. It's like my brain's version of fast food. It's quick, it's easy, it's instantly gratifying.
And that's precisely why so many of us struggle with building habits that require more effort up front. We're battling against our own brains. But the good news is, we can outsmart our wiring.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. I'm all about making things easier, especially when it comes to self-improvement. So how do we do it? How do we outsmart those brains of ours?
We can.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts with minimizing something called friction.
Friction.
Yeah. It's basically like James Clear talks about in the book, those tiny little obstacles, that kind of get in the way of us and the thing we're actually trying to do.
Okay, I think I get it, but give me an example.
Okay, so let's say you want to go for a run after work.
I always have good intentions to do that.
Right, but you haven't really planned it out. You haven't decided on your route. You don't have your clothes laid out. That indecision, it becomes its own form of friction.
Oh, 100%. It's like all those tiny little decisions, all that thinking, it's exhausting. Way easier to just stay on the couch.
Exactly. But imagine this. What if the night before, you're like, okay, running clothes are set, route is planned, playlist is queued up.
You're like that super organized friend we all wish we were.
You're removing the barriers. You're making it harder to say no to yourself.
It's like you're setting your future self up for success.
Exactly. And then on the flip side, you can add friction to habits you're trying to break. So like, want to watch less TV.
Always.
Unplug it after every use.
Oh, man, that's such a good idea. So simple, but so effective. It's like that little bit of extra effort, it makes you really think twice.
Exactly. Okay, but let's talk about bigger goals.
Okay.
The ones that feel really daunting. Like, let's say you want to write a book.
Oh, yeah, that's on my bucket list. But the thought of writing an entire book, it's totally overwhelming.
Right, so don't think about the whole book. Think about the 2-minute rule. Tell yourself, I'm going to write for 2 minutes.
2 minutes. That almost feels like cheating.
Exactly. But it works
Yeah.
because you're breaking it down into the smallest possible action. The key is just starting, overcoming that initial inertia.
It's like the hardest part is getting started.
Once you started, you're way more likely to keep going.
Momentum is a real thing.
Totally. And it applies to any goal. Learning a language. Start with 1 word a day. Want to meditate more. 1 minute.
Okay, so we've got our cues, our intentions. We're making those good habits easy, rewarding. But how do we keep the momentum going long term?
That's where tracking and accountability come in. Think about Benjamin Franklin, the original self-improvement guy, right?
Right.
He used to track his progress in a little notebook, like every single day. Would check off if he stuck to his virtues.
Wait, what virtues?
Oh, he had like 13 virtues he was trying to live by. Things like temperance, order, frugality. And every time he slipped up, he'd mark it down.
It's like keeping score, but for your own self-improvement.
Exactly. And it's surprisingly motivating, seeing your progress laid out visually.
I can see how it would be.
Ooh.
Okay, so what about accountability? How does that fit in?
It's like having a workout buddy for your goals. Adds that extra layer of motivation.
I love that, an accountability partner.
So this entrepreneur, Brian Harris, he wanted to lose weight, right? So he created a contract with his wife and his trainer.
A whole contract. I am here for this. Tell me more.
He outlined his goals and the consequences for not meeting them.
Okay, wait, hold up. Lot consequences. Like, what?
He agreed to pay his trainer $100 for every day. He didn't track his food intake, and $500 to his wife every week if he skipped his weigh-in.
Wow. He put his money where his mouth was.
Right. And it wasn't just about the money. It was about leveraging social accountability. Knowing someone else is aware of our goals, it makes us more likely to follow through. We care about what other people think, right?
We're social creatures.
Yeah.
This has been such an incredible deep dive into atomic habits. We've covered so much. The power of those small changes, cues, rewards, the art of temptation bundling, even how our environment plays a huge role.
We really did. And the 2-minute rule, don't forget about that one. It's all about understanding how our brains work and then, using that to our advantage.
Because ultimately, it's about creating a life where those good habits, they just become effortless,
Become part of who you are.
Exactly. It's about unlocking our potential, but doing it in a way that's sustainable, enjoyable even.
And remember, you don't have to do it all at once. Start small. Pick one habit, one thing you really want to change, and apply what we've talked about today.
Go forth and build those atomic habits and watch as those small changes lead to some really incredible results. Until next time, happy habit building, everyone.